So thank you. Thank you for having both of us. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to share a little bit about our stories. And frankly, kind of how unlikely it would have been for the two of us to be partners, frankly. And somehow divine intervention, whatever you might want to call it, brought us together. So I'm going to share a little bit about my story, and then Shannon will share a little bit about yours, and then we'd like to talk a little bit more about what brought us together. And the next slide. One more. Perfect. So I'm sure that many of you have heard of The Wizard of Oz. And as a child, I tended to watch The Wizard of Oz over and over again. Fairy tales had a way of helping me kind of sort through internal struggles, but it also helped me find some solutions. Somewhere over the rainbow, where dreams come true. Doesn't get better than that. I am the daughter of migrant farm workers, Petra and Juan Sosa. And they taught me to be a spectator rather than a participant in life. My dad would say, dream big, honey. There's nothing you can't do if you just put your mind to it. He said, get a good job. But first, get a good education. That'll open doors for you. And get one in the law so that no one takes advantage of you. My mom would say, don't go out in the dark, or don't go out in the sunlight. Your skin will get too dark. Powder to cover up the fact that I was Mexican. She said, if anybody finds out that you're Mexican, doors will close. She said, blend in, be polite, be quiet, be nice. My beliefs over time developed through observation and confirmations of truths or not. One of my first truths came when I was in second grade. A teacher said, go downstairs and wash your hands. They're dirty before we do this art project. I went downstairs, I washed my hands, and I came back up, eager to please. When I came up, she said, your hands are still dirty. Go back downstairs and wash them again. Downstairs I went, more soap, more water. Upstairs I came, and she said, I don't understand why you're not doing what I'm asking you to do. Go back downstairs, wash those hands until they're white. I went downstairs, and I sat in front of that sink, looked in the mirror, looked at my hands, and realized I was never going to be able to get them any whiter. And a truth emerged. I'm different. I need to work harder at blending in, and I need to make myself invisible. Moving the clock forward, I assimilated so well that most people didn't know that I was Mexican. Married a man with a very Dutch last name. And yes, there are degrees of Dutch, and Verdine is very Dutch. I saw myself as a white person. And I said person, not female. A new truth was emerging. Leaders were males. So if I wanted to lead, I was going to need to lead like a male, stay composed, and show no emotion. This being invisible actually was working for me. Or was it? I had a dream. I wanted to be a participant as well as a spectator. And my dream emerged in that I wanted to be a fellow learning in community, making a difference, especially with the underserved. So down the yellow brick road I went, starting to find my way back to who I was meant to be. In the fall of 2013, I dared to dream big, and I dared to embrace it. Dreams have a way of never going away. They just keep showing up until we're ready to embrace it. In 2013, I was invited to become a W.K. Kellogg Fellow. It was a 3-year adventure. And during that adventure, new truths came to the surface. The answers came in the questions. Who am I? What is community? And how will I make a difference? The fellowship took Shannon and myself actually across the country. We experienced the poverty, the power, and the passion. These were my people. These were my communities. The answer to community came up. Community is a gift. It's a gift to be received, no matter where you are. So face to face with the truth, sometimes personal contempt for the journey that I had chosen to take, and then grace to move forward. Who am I? Yo soy Latina. I am a Latina. The antidote to shame. No more silence. No more judgment. It was time to be me. In 2015 was a time of purging old adventures so that new adventures could come. From my pain came a new passion. How would I make a difference? I would make a difference walking with women in leadership, fellowship, and faith. I started my own business. It's called Mobius Coaching. And the goal is to come alongside other women, creating a transformative space so they too can find their way back along the yellow brick road. I want to change that. And that is me. During this time, a conscious relationship developed between Shannon and myself. It was in the in-between places and spaces, on a bus ride, in the parking lot, at the airport, over the course of 3 years. And we talked about basically our lived experiences as women of color. And through that conversation and that conscious relationship, Sisters Who Lead was born. Our hearts and mind were committed to changing the narrative that there are no women of color qualified to lead in the West Michigan area. We were committed to amplifying the voices and championing the voices and inclusion of female leaders of color in the West Michigan workforce. Somewhere over the rainbow, I found a courageous, fearless, bold Latina. And everything that I was looking for was right there all along. Thank you.
pad. So I need to do a superhero roll call because I believe this room is full of superheroes. Shout out to me your favorite superheroes. Just shout them out. Wonder Woman. Spider-Man. Yes. Lots of smiles. You're like, I am the superhero. Okay, I love it. I love it. I love it. This is great. So you're like me. I love superheroes, and I'm a Gen Xer, so I grew up when you would see Batman and you would see the words like ping, pang, pow. And I grew up seeing Linda Carter as Wonder Woman, and I was like, yes. And I'll never forget when I got a Wonder Woman outfit, and I wore it like every day for a good solid month. And so I have a 4-year-old son, and it's been awesome to see him love superheroes. And his favorites are like some of yours. His favorites are Spider-Man right now, and his other favorite, it was Superman, but Superman kind of got sold out for Batman. So he's really into superheroes. So about 2 years ago, when my husband and we were in Harlem, we bought him this shirt. We bought him this shirt. When we saw it, we said we knew we needed to buy this shirt for him. And so we bought it when he was 3. And I remember the first day that he wore it in his school. And I remembered seeing all of the stares that he got parents and teachers at his school looking as he wore this shirt. When he was 3, he didn't quite realize the stares, but I realized the stares. Literally a couple of weeks ago, probably in July, his school was having this superhero day. And I was like, yes, we're going to not only rock this shirt, but we went to Party City, and we got cape, and we got mask, and I was in it to win it. I was going to be that parent that came up with the ultimate superhero outfit for my son. And so I pulled out everything, and I laid it on the bed to get ready, and he said, I don't think I can wear that shirt, Mom. I was like, what do you mean? We're going to be epic. Like, nobody else's parents are going to coordinate like we are coordinating. And he said, Mom, are you kidding me? Superheroes do not come in brown. And my heart sank. And I started to realize that for my son, being 4, that all of the images that we see of superheroes, everyday people that get to do extraordinary things, if you look throughout your life and you look at the images that you saw in cartoons or you saw in pop culture, my son would be right. Up until Black Panther, which is the 10th grossing movie of all time ever, right? You did not see people that were black or brown cast as superheroes. Our origin stories were muffled, they were silenced, they were ignored, and they were forgotten. You could have Superman, who was otherworldly and gangly. We would even maybe call Superman an immigrant, right? You could have Wonder Woman, who was an Amazon and otherworldly. You could have Spider-Man, who was adopted. So all of these other origin stories, but we couldn't have superheroes that were people of color. And so I have spent all of my life trying to change the norm that all superheroes are not white. There are amazing superheroes that are white, but all the superheroes are not white. And that's some of the work that we've been able to do through Sisters Who Lead. Einstein has a quote that I love. I don't think he even knew I would love this quote, but I love it so much. And I say it all the time. Everybody is a genius, or everybody is a superhero. But if you judge a fish or a superhero by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. That resonates so much with me, and I'm so glad that Marvel is starting to realize this is actually one of the picture of Marvel's next superhero. She's a 9-year-old black girl with textured hair, comes from New York. Or maybe you've heard about America Chavez, who's a Latina woman who's also lesbian, and that's the next 2 superheroes in their queue are women of color. Because there is magic in my melanin, and I didn't always know that. And in a world that tries to tell me that I have to be a fish in order to be genius, I am learning to live into my truth as a tree. And there's something powerful and magical about this. So when we did, I hail from 48234. I grew up on the east side of the city of Detroit in a 641 square foot house. My parents lived in that house until I was the age 21. And so I like to watch Tiny House Nation. Anybody else love Tiny House Nation? And my husband's like, dude, you did that already. Like, you have mastered the Tiny House Nation life. So we need to, like, I'm trying to upgrade. So, but that really, I used to, when I would tell people that I came from the east side of Detroit, and they'll say, like, Detroit proper, and I'm like, yeah, straight Van Dyke Outer Drive all day, that's part of where my magic came from. When we live in a world that tells me that where my zip code, and which should only tell me where I should get my pizza, but zip code that defines what I can be and where I can go, and it starts to constrict what people believe your purpose is and what movement you can have. I have lived every day of my life trying to defy every circumstance of birth that people would try to use to shame me. It is my magic. It is my competitive advantage. It is the secret sauce that I bring into the workplace. It is where I come from and where I descend from is not a liability or a deficit. It is an asset. So every organization that I've ever been able to work for, they get the benefit of the lessons and the wisdom and the resilience and the power and the battle scars that come from my origin story. So Sisters Who Lead was about creating space for new narratives of superheroes, of sheroes that have a variety of hues and a variety of origin stories. It was me saying that I can show up with textured hair and big print earrings and hoop earrings and still be highly brilliant and intelligent and gifted to deal with strategy, that I don't have to fit the fish narrative that we need fishes and we need trees. So when I think about this, I'll go back to this. I'll go back to this picture. I remember when we started Sisters Who Lead, and we wanted to, because we and Pat, around this time in our friendship, we started to curate all of these articles that started to talk about deficits around talent in our community. So we would hear things like, the dearth of minorities, and around the time we started doing our work and the research, which we have around the room, Grand Rapids was listed as the second worst city economically for African Americans by Forbes magazine. We had a mayoral race where 2 women were running, both in Holland and Grand Rapids. We had racial equity being one of those pieces, cornerstone pieces of the political campaigns here. And I'll never forget that, so we would send each other, anytime there was an article that talked about talent and people of color, we would share it. And there was this one article that she sent to me, and it was from the Holland Sentinel. And they were talking about the dearth of talent and talent of color, and where are they? There is no talent that lives here. And there was this task force that they had gathered to deal with the issue. And the photographer had taken a picture of the room. Anybody want to guess what the room looked like? To see a white. There were about 50 superheroes in the room. 98% were men, and all were white. And it was at that moment that Pat and I said, this is the space we want to step into. There was a lot of numeric data going on, but there was no one that had captured the real lived experiences of people that daily live in West Michigan industries at the intersection of race, gender, and leadership. And we wanted to elevate their voices because we knew quantitative data alone couldn't tell the story. But when you're the first and the only, if we even look around this room at the superheroes gathered today, when you're a sprinkle in the room, or you're the first and the only, which is still very highly to happen, it is very risky to tell your lived truth. It is very easy to get ostracized. It is very easy to have your career end. And the women that we were talking to, they were like, how do you protect me if I tell you what the real truth is, how will this not affect my career mobility or my ability to provide for my family? So we protected them, but in the process, we looked at each other one day. I still remember this day, and we said, girl, who was protecting us? Our faces are all in this. This is such a risky space. And I remember one day having a conversation with my husband. I remember telling him, I'm an entrepreneur too. I said, if I stop getting work because of this, are you okay? And if no one wants to hire me because we do this work, are you okay? And then one day it hit me. I descend from people that boycotted public and critical public services so that I could do this. I descend from people that were hosed. I would descend from people that had dogs sit on them. Dogs attacked them. People brutalized. Property confiscated. Making FBI most wanted lists. so that I could even consider doing this work. So how dare I not be courageous? I'll leave you with this, and then we're going to take some questions. Courage, to me, I think there's a lot of definitions of courage. In different iterations and seasons and cycles of my life, I've had different definitions of courage. But I believe that this is the one that I love the most. That courage is being yourself every day in a world that tells you to be everyone else. Thank you. So we wanted to take some questions. We want to uplift the voices of all of these amazing women. So we did this research. The research is there. So if you want to take this back to your workplaces, there we have in the back, like toward the open patio space, there's a lot of this research, this open white paper research on our website, Sisters Who Lead, because we wanted to make it accessible. We wanted organizations to know that talent lives here and how to create inclusive environments and community within workplaces so people feel fit and belonging and feel safe to bring their authentic selves to work every day. And so Sisters Who Lead became the outgrowth of this research. We did our first conference. We asked women what they wanted to do, and they said, well, we need a conference designed for us and by us. And this hue of beautiful women, we didn't know if it would be successful. I think that's along the way. We had no clue along the way if it would be successful, it would work. So we had our first conference in March of this year, and we sold out. Like, we literally had a waiting list with like 200 women on it because we just didn't have enough space to accommodate. So we want to answer any questions that you have for Pat or I about our own individual journeys, about workplace environments, or about Sisters Who Lead.
I can kick us off. Can you tell us, do you have some really amazing success stories or things that came out of this conference? I'd love to hear a little bit about what happened from this.
I'm smiling and looking at Pat. I think one of the beauties, I will say from my vantage point, is that talent lives here. 68% of the women that we researched with Sisters Who Lead have bachelor's degrees. 48% have master's degrees. 12% had doctorate degrees. We wanted to debunk, smack it up, flip it down, this myth that talent didn't live here, that talent didn't live here. Talent is abundant. But when we talk to women of color, they didn't have access to job postings. What we've learned in this process is that West Michigan uses referral-based hiring all the time. So if you have a homogenous organization and you say, hey, we have this job posting, share it with your networks. If you're not intentional, most people's networks look like them. So a homogenous workforce has a homogenous social capital group. They bring more people that look like them. And then we say, well, we don't know where the talent is. So I think that was big for us, is just to show these images of amazing, there are chemists in here and women that work for the Department of Defense in here and entrepreneurs and creatives and graphic designers in here, and they don't have access all the time to the talent pipelines in our community.
One of the things that we found out is that people are coming to the West Michigan area to work as transplants, and they are staying 1 to 3 years. And there were people in this group that were basically saying, I'm going to the grocery store to try to find friends, people that I can connect with. And so I think one of the big things that came out of our research is the women wanted to get together. They wanted to tell their stories. They wanted to live in conscious relationship beyond the, I like your earrings, or where did you get your hair done? They wanted to talk about the deep stuff, and they wanted to do it right away. And when we originally brought the women together and we asked them whether or not they would be willing to come face to face, of the people that we had in our original survey, which was an online survey that we gathered the data, almost all of them said, yeah, we want to get together. So we had to pick and choose. And this is really an outgrowth of, we want to get together. We want to be a support system to one another. We want to create a network. And really, there are people that said, I think I'm going to stay. I think I'm going to stay here because I'm starting to find people that are like me.
Yeah, all the way in the back. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. So as anyone that's trying to make a difference, I'm sure you've thought
Such a loaded question. That's great. It's great.
Well, one of the things that you're going to, obviously you can see that Shannon and I, our styles are very different. I need time to think it through. So I'm going to let Shannon answer. And then I'll give you mine.
I think for me, it has been, I think, a couple of things. I think for me, one of the biggest things I had to overcome was the fear of taking risks. It is, as a woman of color, it is very easy to still be the first in Grand Rapids to do something. And there's a lot of risk with first steps and pioneering places that didn't exist, and honestly pioneering places that didn't exist for you. And so I think for me, a lot of it has been being willing to take a risk and having this power of community tribe of people that tell me, girl, live your best life and shine on and do you, be unapologetically you, because I wasn't always that way. That me being willing and authentically, I'm a almost 6 foot tall black woman with textured hair in West Michigan. And that is not always, that has not always been safe to be. I don't get the luxury of self-identifying who I am or my background. People look at me and in 7 seconds they're making 11 judgments about me. And so I think it is often me being okay with that and honestly kind of not caring about it. 40 has been great for me. Like 40, turning 40, I don't know if there's any other fella, I know a couple of us, yes. Like 40 is like the new 60 because I see, like when I was growing up, my grandmother was like, when she turned 60, it was like the filter fell off and granny gave it to you straight, no chaser, and she was just this, like she just owned it, like total Beyonce owning it. And I used to be like, I'm gonna be that way one day. And I told my mom recently, I was like, I don't know what happened. It's like I went to bed at 39, I got up at 40, and I was this unapologetic version of myself, and I love her. I kind of like her. I'm fangirling over her because I didn't have that before. And I find that whenever I have, the more I give myself freedom to not be afraid. Oh, geez. The more I've been giving myself freedom to be me, I've been soaring. And so people look at my life now and they're like, girl, you're just blowing up. I'm like, you just don't know. This has been 17 years of sowing seed so that I would one day be authentically me. And the world needs an authentic me. Yeah.
I think the thing that stands out for me is identity. Knowing who you are and not allowing other people to define you. And it's an internal kind of conversation that you have with yourself. As you can see, I'm more of the introvert, and we've got Shannon more of the extrovert. But I think part of the reason that I'm here and that we're here together is I am 60. And it's taken me, really only the last, I would say, 10 years of my life. In the last 10 years of my life, I have decided to live more courageously. I left a job that I'd been with for 32 years. I went into seminary. I left that. I co-founded, or I founded a nonprofit. I left that. I started a business, and I ran for politics. I don't know what I was thinking. All in the last 10 years. Because I felt like I was starting to run out of time. So do it now. The internal conversation, the conversation about being courageous, about being bold. You just, it's kind of like this conversation, like how you asked, how do you know what to do on any given day? You know. Each one of you has a unique journey that you have taken. Nobody can tell you other than you. It'll be things that keep showing up, this little conversation, this little voice. Some people are more like words that keep popping out. There's a story, there's something about those words, those people, those experiences that are drawing you. What is it that it's trying to tell you to do? And then do it. It's kind of like that dream. It's never going to go away. It's going to keep showing up until you embrace it.
I would say too, friendship. I think Pat talked about it before, but we would ride a lot of buses and a lot of planes and all of those things. And she was exiting an executive director position. I was doing an interim, and we were like the first and the only. So we would talk about the emotional labor of always being in spaces where you're the first and the only. You know, think about that. When you go into a room and you see that one person that's noticeably different, how do we create community for that person? Because that's a lot to navigate all the time. And then we would talk about the strategies we needed in our work. And I think it was a lot of times, Sisters Who Lead grew out of friendship. And so we keep creating these spaces for women to have friendship. And to have rest from always being the first and the only in the room. Racial battle fatigue is real when you constantly have to be and being the only, and it's like, so black people, you know, and it's like, great, like, you get, that's real. And so I think having a tribe of people that you can find fit and belonging with and help you to grow your sea legs and being yourself is a gift. Yeah. I'm looking at Molly. I don't know how much time we have for questions.
Plenty of time
Yeah.
for questions.
Other question.
So if we're interested in getting involved, what are the next steps for something like me who wants to get involved?
I think being an ally, and that can look different. I have to be quite honest. It's like, Shannon and my relationship has developed over time, and she's dynamic. I mean, she just like, sometimes I'll sit here and it's like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm supposed to be up there with her. I just kind of get absorbed. And I wanted to be an ally and do this work, frankly, because there are people that you admire. You're like, I want to be like, well, there are kind of characteristics and things that you like about people. There are many things that I love about Shannon. And there are times that I'd like to be like her. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. But I can be like me. And that means you have to find your way. Like, how do you become an ally? You're not always going to get it right. And this is kind of a reminder. I remember when we were first sharing the data that we collected with the community about, Sisters Who Lead and the workforce and women's lived experiences as women of color in leadership positions. And I remember thinking, we're doing such a good thing. And I was standing up, and we were having a conversation, and we were sharing, and all of a sudden, someone kind of like attacked me, or it felt like an attack, and you're kind of like, well, yeah, but I'm doing a good thing. I thought that, people would be really appreciative of this. And it got real scary for me. It's like, and there was this kind of conversation about, well, yeah, but, you were able to, you're light enough complected that you were able to kind of flip-flop depending on, the situations you were in compared to somebody who's black, and it's just obvious. And I felt really exposed. And there was, so it kind of goes back to identity, what the conversations that you're having with yourself. Take a risk. You're gonna mess up. It's not always going to be perfect. Go into those spaces, reach out, go into new cultures, new places, new spaces, learn. You kind of know you will have arrived when maybe your Facebook looks a little bit different as far as the hue that is represented. You'll kind of know that you've arrived when somebody is very different than you and they happen to be eating dinner in your own home. And it's scary because those are all new places and spaces, but do it anyway. It takes courage.
For women of color in the room, we are having our next conference. It'll be May 16th and 17th of 2019. So we're starting the planning now, so we can tell you about that. But for superheroes that are not women of color in the room, we used to talk about allies, and that's like that first step. But the conversations around equity and inclusion are shifting even to talking about accomplices, right? So an ally is like, oh, there's a fire, and an accomplice is the one that's running by with the bucket of water, right? And so where you have to figure out where you are on that continuum of being an ally to being an accomplice, and step out even more courageously. I didn't focus on this slide, but I love this. I think comic strips are real life, and they just give us sugar to help the medicine go down. So this one says, we need to focus on diversity. I want you to hire more people who look different but think just like me. Or this one, I've hit the glass ceiling so many times my hair smells like Windex. We love both, and we think about this, but we all know, so for this one, it's about thinking about your workplaces, or if you're entrepreneurs in this room, thinking about how do my supplier diversity, like Rachel alluded to earlier, do I buy from businesses of color? Do I support businesses of color? Do I know where any businesses of color are? Am I leveraging my dollars in a way that I can activate equity? And that's really important. Thinking about, yes, there's universal pieces for women of glass ceiling and glass cliff, but then when you lay intersectional identities on top of that, it's a completely different experience. You'll think about, this is a little exercise, just a little superhero exercise. Scroll through your Instagram, and if you look at networks that say they're for women, do you see women of color in the room? You'll be surprised. I'll see it's like, wise women networking for greatness. And I'm looking. I know a whole lot of wise women that want to network for greatness, but there's no one in the room that looks like me. And it's about when you go into those spaces, are you saying anything about the absence of other superhero narratives in the room? Are you using your own ability to see to help others see? Those are acts of courage. Are you slowing down hiring processes so that you can connect with affinity groups? Do you know there's over 50, part of our research, we show there's over 53 affinity groups. There's Anishinaabe Circle, Latina Network of West Michigan, Black Women Connect, BPGR. There's the Latino Network. Do you know any of those? Do you know anybody in any of those? Do you have an intimate relationship with anybody in any of those? Because that's where talent is. You have to think about those things. How are you connecting with superheroes that don't look like you, that have narratives that we need? How do you do that? And how do you change even through your own social capital, who you're seeing in places of power, in places of position, in places of leadership in our community? And that's work that is going to take all of us to do. Yes.
How can we more formally support your projects, whether it be money, sharing? It's a whole lot of privilege in here. How can we use it?
Well, as Shannon said, we're in the process of starting to think about moving forward in our planning for Conference 2019. And so we are looking for sponsors, people who are willing to come alongside us. And we're looking for sponsors. This isn't like a money thing, although it is. But it's also a heart thing. We want organizations who really believe in and want to diversify their workforce. One of the things that we realized was that a lot of the people that we were surveying had kind of the normative titles. And what we're finding is that a lot of women of color were not getting paid or had the title. They had assistant, administrative assistant, coordinator, when they were actually directors and managers of their organizations. And so it's really important that we know that it takes baby steps, but you could introduce this idea of what does it look like? How do we begin to hire? How do we, one of the things that we have done is actually post positions that are middle to upper management and board positions. The boards in your organization are critical. Changing the faces of the people that are in the boards of directors, that's where change is going to start.
I love that. We do post job postings all the time on Sisters Who Lead, but we will not really, we have made a decision. We are not necessarily posting entry-level positions because often women of color get typecast for those positions. And we found that they were doing the work of directors with the role of assistant. There's one woman I remember, and she told us, she said, from participating in the survey in this process, she went to her HR team and she had built this case of like what she did and why she deserved to have this title. And the HR representative said, we've been waiting for you to come to us for 3 years. They were literally, because she didn't say anything or have the courage, they didn't say anything, and they knew she was doing the job. And that was very commonplace. And so I think we say to organizations all the time, like yes, people need entry-level positions, no knock to that, but we are targeting specifically mid and executive positions of leadership and board positions. And so if you don't have that, we want to amplify and advance the voices and visibility of women of color to be transformative in those spaces in our community. So no shade, but real talk. Like, I mean, that's kind of like the spirit of how we've been doing things. I think the other piece is, there was another organization that was doing, one of the things we were really proud of when we did Sisters Who Lead is that 90% of every vendor that we used were women of color. Part of why we wanted to do that is that talent lives here and businesses are here. And so we try to share those. One of the things we really tried to do is that if you're in systems that buy stuff all the time, just even starting to look at your supply, like who do you get paper from, or who does somebody's makeup when they come, or where do you buy the gift basket from? And if you don't know someone or you want to slow down a little bit to find out where you can be more intentional, we can help you with that. And we aren't getting a, Pat and I don't get any, we're not getting paid, we're not full-time Sisters Who Lead, this is passion work. But we want to help uplift voices of women of color. And then if you're part of an organization and you want to consider funding this work, especially because code switching is real. A lot of women of color, they feel like I have to straighten my hair, I have to do these things, I have to hide these elements of my identity to find fit and belonging. So if you see that happening in your organizations, and by funding this, you give somebody a chance to come and to breathe. It was really interesting. One of the things we noticed, and then we'll end, is how many women came. So the conference was like Netflix and chill. Like that was literally our attire. Like there's business casual, and then ours was like Netflix and chill. And it was amazing. Women wore head wraps. Women wore their hair in their texture. They didn't straighten their hair. And we heard so many women talk about how I felt like I can breathe. I wore earrings as big as I possibly wanted them to be. I wore vibrant colors, like I didn't have to mute. I could bring in these elements of my heritage that every day, usually Monday through Friday, I have to mute. And so if you see muted leaders, muted women of color in your organizations, even if you just say, I want to sponsor her to go, that's one of the ways you can get involved and to be active. I will turn it over to our fearless leader, to Molly.